Is this the beginning of a new civil war, or is it all just about the Epstein files? A lot of people see fascism rising in America right now. Some even think the last 10 years has been about the rise of racism and slavery coming back. Look, that's absurd. There's something much more profound taking place in American politics right now. There's also something far more nefarious. So what I see when I see young anarchists mobbing federal buildings or middle-aged white women in frog costumes trying to find purpose in life, I see the shock troops, literally, of a new postmodern Confederacy. Look, sanctuary cities are certainly havens for election fraud and illegal voting. That's how California went solid blue. But they're a lot more than just that. They're the rotting cesspools of globalization. Our cities were once the shining cities on a hill. They were the great accomplishments of American civilization. And the protesters, they're not defending illegal immigration. They weren't defending George Floyd. What they're really defending are the modern plantation owners, the globalist billionaires who are destroying this country. They're defending the same Wall Street bailouts and the same forever wars they used to protest against. So in this video, I want to show you how sanctuary cities actually work, who the globalists really are, where they come from, and how Trump's manufacturing policy is a higher form of strategic warfare so we can break down these globalists. More importantly, this is how we fight back. I'm Mike Steger. I've been fighting globalization for literally 25 years. I believe this political fight is the most important fight determining the future of our civilization. So if you want to help win this war, you want to help rebuild our country, just hit the like and subscribe button, support this channel. Your support, it just means a ton. It's everything. What did globalization do to our cities? Well, this is what sanctuary cities look like. It's a dark age. It's an urban desert. All of the industry left decades ago, and with it, all of the decent jobs. So what happened? The men become listless. They join gangs. Jim Brown, a famous running back, documented this in Los Angeles. This is where the Bloods and Crips come from. And so what happens when the jobs leave? And your intelligence community, like the CIA, start to bring in cocaine and crack. The men start selling drugs, get into violence, prostitution. The women go on welfare. All of this happens because of globalization. It's not what just seems to happen. It's not a coincidence. This is the policy of globalization. So what is globalization? It's the same system as the old Confederacy. It's free trade, no tariffs, no protection of wages, cheap labor, slave labor, and big profits for the plantation owners and their bankers. Look, to be clear, racism was just an excuse. It was never about race. It was always about total economic control, turning the entire population into servants and slaves like the Roman Empire. This is why we fought a civil war. This is why the Union fought and won. As Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand. It will either be all slave or all free. That was literally the Second American Revolution. And we fought the first one for the same reason, because our nation is fundamentally anti-globalist. Our union, our nation was built on the principles of the Declaration of Independence and Hamilton's idea of American economics, tariffs, manufacturing, infrastructure, high wages for American workers. Hamilton knew, Washington knew, even Lincoln, freedom requires real production. Industry, manufacturing, roads, science, education. Either you're producing a better future for the next generations or your civilization will begin to die. And this is why the United States is built to fight globalism. This is who we are. This is what's in our pedigree. This is what makes America great. But who really are the globalists? Is it Jeffrey Epstein? Well, certainly Epstein is a factor. Epstein was at the center of a kind of globalist culture to manipulate the various political, financial, business, and cultural elite into a kind of blackmail operation to maintain what? To maintain a globalist order that destroys nations and civilization. But it's much less about who and far more about what. The Roman Empire is certainly the starting model. Lots of slaves, cheap labor, bread and circus culture, and a religion based on sex and violence cults, and a military to take total control over land and resources. But Rome failed because military control is a hard way to run a massive empire. Napoleon tried it and failed. Hitler tries it and failed. So the rich Romans, as Rome collapses and the barbarians start to loot the city of Rome, they go to Venice and they invent something new, a liberal form of empire. In some ways, it's ruled by bankers. Instead of controlling everything with military control, land, population, and resources, they now control trade through banking and finance. They control governments through trade and finance. And they use wars like the Crusades as kind of a forever war policy to control trade and governments. The problem is something changes. By the 1300s, there's something new emerging in Europe, a kind of renaissance. And I'm going to make more videos about this in the future. Subscribe and stay tuned. But this is important because after the Black Plague, this renaissance explodes in Europe. A new kind of culture is emerging, a kind of revival, a great awakening of Christian civilization. And within this golden age, ideas like oceanic exploration, governments based on the consent of the governed, building civilization, building cities begins to take hold. And the bankers in Venice, they have to respond. So they move up to the north, to the Netherlands. And by the late 1500s, they're building the largest liberal global empire to ever exist. To control this kind of liberal empire, the Dutch created monopoly corporations, multinational corporations with government monopoly, no tariffs, free trade, total control, like the Dutch East India Company. They used cheap slave labor in the colonies, and then to share their profits back home, they set up a stock market to basically spread the wealth. And then to control the speculation and the banking process, they set up a central banking system. In their case, the Bank of Amsterdam, like our Federal Reserve. So you get a sense. Multinational corporations, monopoly control over trade, cheap slave labor, a distribution of speculative profits, and total control of the banking system, not by government, but by a merchant banking class. Now, the problem is that this system in the Netherlands gets threatened by growing national powers like France on the continent. So they decide to move ship, and they decide to take this liberal empire offshore. Where do they go? Across the channel to England. In 1688, the Dutch invade England. Literally today, the British still call this invasion a glorious revolution. Just imagine calling an invasion and takeover of your country glorious. This is the beginning of the British Empire. And it wouldn't surprise you to find out that the massive African slave trade and importing slaves into North America begins at the same time. It was this same British Empire the Southern Plantation sold their cotton to, the same British Empire that backed the South in their rebellion to defend that cheap labor slave system and their cheap cotton and their free trade. It was this same British Empire that we recognize wanted to subject our nation and our colonies back in the 1770s. They wanted to strip us of our culture of self-government and reduce us to imperial subjects. This is why we fought a revolution in 1776, and it's why we're fighting one again today. So why are liberals and radicals protesting against Trump and ICE today? Well, like we said, it's not about illegal immigrants. It's because the modern plantation owners want to stop this MAGA American revolution. The same way they sent out the hippies in the 1970s to shut down nuclear energy. You can think about it this way. How much money would you invest in rebuilding Baghdad right now? Not much. You wouldn't put your 401k into rebuilding Baghdad. Land is cheap, but probably the terrorists, the violence, the gangs, and the chaos make it a bad investment. Well, what's the difference between Baghdad and Chicago? Baghdad is the most violent city in the Arab world, and yet the city of Chicago has about 30% more murders. It's about 12 per 100,000 in Baghdad. It's about 15 in 100,000 in Chicago. But the south side of Chicago, it's between 50 and 90 people per 100,000. That's like a 900% increase from the murders in Baghdad. The south side of Chicago is up to 9 times more violent than Baghdad, Iraq, the most violent and dangerous city in the Arabic world. Chicago was our industrial center. 4 out of every 10 Chicagoans employed in 1960 worked in manufacturing and industry. It was the center of the nation, a logistical hub which connected railroads and roads to every city and part of the nation. Today, that's why the drug cartels set up in Chicago, so they can distribute their narcotics, their gang and violent activity to the entire parts of our country. So we've got more gangs, more violence, and more crime as we continue to shut down the industries of our country. And there wasn't a massive invasion of Chicago like there was of Iraq. It wasn't bombed. It wasn't destroyed. It wasn't looted by an invading army. It's like we've done this to ourselves because we've let the globalists come in and take these cities over. and the factories are long gone. Thanks, globalization. Thanks, liberals. Thanks, radicals. Get it through your thick heads. And then you let tons of illegal aliens in who will work for half the pay. And the people that live on the South Side, the working class people, the Black and Hispanic inner city communities, they now have to live in a pit of poverty, violence, and chaos. This is literally the new Democrat plantation. This is literally the colonial system of destruction that these radicals and leftists and liberals think they're opposing, when in reality, it's Trump, it's MAGA, it's the patriotic Americans who recognize bringing back the real America, the industrial, scientific, and hopeful America, that we're going to build a future and build a civilization, is the real solution. So when middle-aged white liberal women come out in their frog costumes, or when they defend mass rioting in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, or Seattle, what are they really protecting? Maybe the criminal illegal aliens for the moment, but really they're making sure no one touches the globalist experiment, the kind of bizarre Frankenstein petri dish of our inner cities. The globalists have created huge rotting wounds in our cities, and from these wounds, cancers will spread throughout the country. Literally, we could see new diseases come out if you continue to let our inner cities become these kinds of destroyed, festering wounds. But the worst disease, by far the worst disease of them all, is globalization itself. Okay, so what's the cure? There's only one really clear cure. It's always worked in any nation, whether it was the United States, Germany, Japan, Russia, South Korea. It's worked every single time. And that is massive industrial growth, a revival of the American system of economics, of Hamilton, Washington, Lincoln. No other policy has ever built a broad middle class, ever, like a return to manufacturing, a reshoring of production, a reshoring of a kind of moral commitment, a moral economic commitment from us as a people towards the future generations of our nation, that our nations, that our progeny, our children will have a better platform to produce an even more beautiful, powerful, and prosperous civilization. This is what our cities used to be. They were the industrial engines of American growth. In 1960, the four biggest industrial centers really in the world at that time were New York and Los Angeles, Chicago, and Detroit. Can you imagine? New York was so industrial, they had to clean the windows on the skyscrapers every single day. The whole point of cities, historically, was to bring people together to make advanced production possible. Cities are not meant to be playgrounds for a financial class with a bunch of sex toy shops, drug dens, and a diversity of culinary experiences. This is not a playground for a kind of post-college hedonism before you take on adult responsibilities. Cities are the very foundations of our civilization. And this is why President Trump has launched a massive rebuilding of American industry. Imagine if that industry now takes hold in Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles again. If places like Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, and Memphis, and Baltimore become again major hubs of industry and production. Can the Democratic plantation continue? Can these globalists keep their chokehold on the American political culture? I don't think so. But right now, this industrial process is mostly happening in states that already support real industry. The Republican states, the ones that haven't gone along with the weird climate change, green energy, fake tech hoax, like a lot of the liberal blue states have. These blue states epitomize the globalist system. What do you find if you go to California, Massachusetts, or New York? You find huge wealth gaps, a growing welfare state, massive homelessness, increasing drug addiction, and a huge amount of anger. You don't see a sense of prosperity, of community. You don't see institutions committed to building a civilization. And this is the main problem. If the globalists can keep this new manufacturing boom out of the cities, then they can keep telling voters that Trump and the new Republican Party is failing, that these policies don't make a real difference in their lives. And it's obvious for the globalists, it's better for people to stay on drugs, work low-wage service jobs, and then get a government check, live on welfare, than it is to join the American dream, to rebuild cities and create real civilization. For one very obvious reason, because if people are living the American dream, rebuilding cities, building communities, handing off a better civilization to their children, then they're no longer going to tolerate the insanity of these globalist games and antics. This is why the globalists have been building a new confederacy of sanctuary cities, whether it's the West Coast, the kind of postmodern confederacy, or what they've done to Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, and Boston. Plague they intend to spread. And it's the white liberals who then come in and protect this kind of satanic experiment where literally our civilization goes to die. I've seen it. I've seen Oakland, California, riddled with homeless camps, riddled with people with major mental illnesses, drug addiction, being left on the streets to suffer and die like animals. And the white liberals say, yeah, but that's their choice. That's their culture, and they defend it. You know, there's an economist trained by the British East India Company, a guy named Thomas Malthus. He's the one who comes up with the idea that population growth is geometric, while food and resource growth is only arithmetic. It's the very foundations of the environmentalist cult today, globally. But Malthus, the British economist, also had an idea of how to control population growth. He said basically pack people into crowded slums so they would die faster from crowded poverty. That's what we're dealing with. Globalization is not some kind of random liberal, let's just see what happens when you make free trade available. This has been thought through for centuries with even academic justifications of how they're going to basically destroy civilization so they can maximize financial profits for a small elite. We intend, the American experiment is to build civilization and to ask all citizens that their right and responsibility is to participate in building civilization, to building new cities, to building new industries, and to share that prosperity with other nations that want to participate. So let's get to the political point. The way to break this deadlock is to bring this vision into the cities, to have more political candidates, to have more political leadership, to have more content and propaganda that confronts the insanity of this question, of these protests in Minneapolis, the anti-ICE operations, this kind of controlled military low-grade insurgency that's taking place in places like Seattle or Los Angeles, that we're going to break the back of this globalist network by communicating a sense of the kind of civilization we intend to build. Because the working classes of these cities, they don't get it. They're confused. They've got the mainstream media screaming on one end. They've got all these radicals and liberals screaming on the other. And they don't necessarily understand. They've never actually seen the real America over the last 50 or 60 years. We've been a globalist-dominated country. So it's time to bring back the real America. It's time to communicate that. It's time to bring back the American system of Hamilton and Washington. It's time to revive the ideas of Lincoln and the Union. It's time to rebuild our critical manufacturing base. This is what scares the globalists the most. This is the kind of fight that will destroy their power. This is what President Trump is doing. We are going to continue to communicate the core questions that are going to determine this fight to revive American civilization. Because I believe it's critical that we unify our country. We unify it around a shared sense of building a civilization, that this is our right and responsibility as citizens, and that we create a better nation for the generations that come after us. And if we build this kind of political movement that's no longer split up by globalist urban plantations, then we'll have the power to take on the entire globalist system. This is what President Trump is attempting to do. This is no less than the third American Revolution. And it's happening now. It's not some dream decades away. It's time to put an end to globalism and end this era of destruction. Look, thanks for listening. If this kind of video is your thing, then please subscribe to our channel and sign up for the emails and the link in the description. In talking to people on the streets, I find there are so many smart young Americans who are tired of the political rants, and they want to talk about real ideas, real projects, and they want to bring back a sense of a national mission. That's what this channel is all about. We don't need to keep reacting. So thanks for watching, and let's start building.